Hello guys, this is GhazzyTV's cat, Siri, the descendant of Bob the Dreadful Devourer Jr. the Fourth. That's her name, actually. We're here to show you how to craft minion weapons. Basically, if you want to get something like this, it's going to require a lot of currency. So I'm going to talk about some different approaches of how to do it very cheaply, and how to approach minion weapons in a cheaper version, such as going for +1 to start with, or going with +2 big dick ones, or even going for something like this with cold exposure or even intimidation versions of these weapons. So first things first, low budget approach. You would go for doing it this way. You take a mod group, count 1, and then level of all, and you search for spell skill or minion skill, and then preferably you want an open suffix by empty suffix modifier 1, and then you do, well, you do that here, suffix empty 1 with one of these modifiers. You click search, and you can see that these are cost nothing. So this would be the low budget approach of a mini weapon. You get something like this, and then you just benchcraft trigger craft on it, and you're done. However, when you start looking at +2, they start to be a bit more expensive. Now, a very generic one is, this is crafted, you can see that right here, that this is crafted in the exact same way that I will show you how to do it in Harvest League. But this is basically the best way to do it. However, when it comes to craft Exile, for example, to show you how to do it outside of Harvest League, you would have to go to one-hand weapons, convoking wands, and then you search for the level of all minions and spells, and then fossils, and then compute best selection, which will tell you to use Shuddering, Corroded, Jagged, and Metallic Fossil, and it's going to be once every 12th try to hit. This is the usual way of crafting these outside of Harvest, but I will be focusing in this video of how to do this type of crafting in the current league. So the 4-socket resonator craft can be very expensive. I think the resonators are pretty damn expensive. I'm going to show you the cheap routes to do this. Obviously, you are going to have a small chance of hitting some really big ones with like extra minion damage. For example, like this one has a tier 2 minion damage roll. So that's going to come down to RNG. So if you look at the raw cost efficiency, once every 12 try to hit this is how you do the +2 ones outside of Harvest League. When it comes to not Harvest League, you want to get yourself a +1 wand, and that's very simple. You skip this and you take 1, and you just search for plus level of spell skills. The reason you do this is because you can buy these a lot cheaper, and you want to look for this on a convoking wand and then search, and you'll see that you can buy these, well, with a fracture, which is perfectly fine. However, you'd rather avoid that in general because it's going to be a bit tricky to do it without it. So if you look at fracture, take no, and you can see that these are going for about 80 chaos, which is pretty chill. And the way you crafted this one, once you have a wand like this, you want to have to regal it to get the modifiers on it. In this case, I got minion movement speed. That's perfectly fine. So what I do now is very simple. I will basically craft caster. Caster mods cannot be rolled on it. And the reason we do this is if you look at PWDB mods, all of these links to these websites will obviously be available in the descriptions below the video. The reason we do caster mod like this is because of meta tags. We have our +1 spell skill already. In this case, we are now lacking the plus level of minion skills, which is right here, which is not tagged with just caster. It also has a minion tag and gem level tag, and for some reason, this doesn't have the caster meta tag. It only has the pseudo tags, which is really, really weird, which allows us to actually augment the caster craft on this and allow us to hit this tag. However, there's one more mod that will do this as well, and that is damage over time fire multiplier. Has the exact same approach because these have the meta tag of caster, but it doesn't have the other tag here, which allows it to roll the fire damage over time multiplier. This allows us to augment the caster mod, and we would then be able to hit this with the plus level of minion skills, and if we fail, which we most likely will on the first try, we'll get the fire damage multi over time, and then we'd have to do it again, which guarantees that prefix. So if you have +1 level with open prefixes, you're able to do this very, very easily. So to show you how to do it, in this case, we kind of don't want the movement speed or accuracy. So we can do remove non-caster and add as caster, like this, to get rid of those two modifiers to have a perfectly clean +2 level of minion skills weapon. or plus level of minion skills and plus level of all spell skills. So we put this one up. We put this, remove a non-caster, which will take the movement speed or accuracy. And as you can see, we got fire damage over time multiplier. We do it again and it will remove the accuracy and it will add the minion skill. And we're done. Now with this approach, we now have a +2 weapon with a fire damage over time multiplier. Now you have a large variety of options of how you want to approach this. Obviously, you can take this weapon and go into your crafts and take remove fire, for example. If we even have one, we'll see if we have that. Let's see. I might not have a remove fire. If you don't have a remove fire, it's going to be a bit sad. So basically, you use a remove firecraft to purge off the fire multi, and at that point, you then have an opening to do a couple of other crafts if you so wish. So by removing fire, we would have a clean item with +1 level of minion skills and plus level of spell skills. Then you have the option of multi-crafting it by adding minion damage and a trigger, and then you can basically slam it if you want to add another suffix, maybe add speed or whatever you want for the sake of getting yourself some extra stats for your minions. It's completely up to you how you want to do it, because multi-craft and trigger are 2 suffixes, and the minion damage is a prefix to fill that slot in, allowing you to have 1 more modifier on it. The other option in this case would be to put an influence on it. So I'm going to talk a bit more in depth when it comes to the influence approaches for these type of weapons. There's 2 generic options when it comes to influence for minion weapons. So I'm going to start with the easy one, which is to provide intimidate. It's basically what I did on my high budget Spectre build, but I have actually moved away from that and changed my gems around to add an awakened melee physical for my carrying golem and guardian, so that they apply intimidate instead of me doing it through my weapon, so that I could focus on the hatred, which is arguably the better version. So the intimidate is basically a suffix rolled hunter modifier. The way you do it is you block your prefixes. In this case, we have fire damage, so it's already sorted. So if I wanted to do this craft, I would actually just slam a hunter or one it, which I have, but we're not going to do it. The reason we are going to keep cannot roll caster mods is that if you look at casters, you can see that we would actually rule out the possibility for us to roll this one. However, we have then opening for the other 6 modifiers. So to actually change this and make this a better approach for us to hit the one we want, which is the intimidate version, we would simply, in this case, benchcraft it with cannot roll attack mods. And that is done through the benchcraft, and then do cannot roll attack mods, which cost 1 exalted. Now with the cannot roll attack mod bench, we can then search for attack, and we can see that that would rule out this one as well as the one we want. So there's basically a couple of different ways to do it, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you hit something you can play around with. In me personally, would keep the cannot roll caster mod because the attack blocks the one we want. So I would keep this craft and then would then slam it, which would then put us in a situation where we have a pretty high chance of hitting the intimidate, because there's 2 different versions and both is fine to keep, because it doesn't really matter if you have a little bit lower % chance of get this one. So that's 1,000 ways to hit it, whereas the other one would be to hit the attack physical version, and both of these are able to be removed. Same thing with the chaos physical is able to be removed because of the tags of chaos and physical, as well as the tags of fire if you hit this one. So all of these can be deterministically removed, and since you then have hunter influence, you can literally just re-roll the attack crafts or physical crafts, because if you look at physical on the ones as a suffix, there's nothing here that would actually impact it. So all you really need to do is slam it with a hunter orb, and then at that point remove the mod if you get the incorrect one, and then augment physical to get the hunter one that you want, or augment attack, sorry, because that will be changing with this one or the one you want, and then just re-roll until you hit it. Another approach for the hunter one, which I think is better, is to block the prefixes and then make it hunter influence before you make it +2, because you could use the remove non-caster mod. So if you accidentally hit the malevolence, you can make sure that this mod is taken away from the suffix when you are doing the caster mods to get yourself to the +2 state, which would make that process a bit cheaper. Now, that's only for the ones that really want to push intimidate. So basically, when it comes to the Redeemer version, which is what we're going to focus on in this video, we don't want to have any prefixes, so we're going to block those off, which we have right now. We're going to keep the caster modifier, that cannot roll caster, because we're in a situation where the Redeemer modifiers on this weapon is going to be, this one doesn't have the proper tag for the Onslaught and Caster, but the double damage as well as the cast speed will not be able to roll. And the reason I can see this is because of the darker caster tag here is the meta tag, but it does not block the Onslaught one, so these can still roll. So you will augment or slam it with a Redeemer Exalted Orb, and then if you hit the Aura one, then you kind of get fucked over. And the only way you can solve that is to use either remove influence modifier and then augment the influence modifier, or simply use the remove influence modifier, augment the influence modifier, the simple remove add one, till you get the mod you want. It's a pretty high probability that you hit the mod you want. However, if you do hit cold exposure, you can use remove cold and then augment the influence modifier again if you want to, or do the same thing with remove add. Same thing with the curse enemies with frostbite, you can remove that with the cold modifier. So the only thing that you cannot remove is the one that has the lowest probability of hitting, and that's the aura one. So once you've done this to the point where you might want to get a tier 1 hatred effect, which is what I have in my weapon, for example, you can after that benchcraft it with multiple benchcrafts, and then all multiple crafts, put in the trigger and put in the minion damage, and you'll end up with a very, very sexy weapon, which in that case would basically look like this. By searching this with a open suffix like this, and then have hatred effect, and minions deal increased damage. It basically would look like this. Did I take? Oh, my bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would look like this. It doesn't even exist because I'm doing something wrong here. Either way, let's not waste time. So basically, you'd be in a situation where you have the multi-craft in, and you get the trigger, you get the minion damage, and you have the hatred effect roll, which is what I'm going to do with this weapon specifically. Now we should actually find the weapon so I can show you guys how much there actually is worth. So let's do a search properly for it this time. So we do this, we do this, we do the hatred effect, and we search for this, and we'll see what's available. So in this case, we have a 15 Exalted Wand, and you barely spend that currency to craft it. So for the sake of profit, it's very good. For the sake of using, it's very good. And this is the very simple way of crafting it. And this is even a tier 2 hatred effect, or 15x. As soon as you go up to a tier 1, you see the price going for 22 Exalteds. And this is still with a bench crafted approach. Now, of course, if you start fiddling around with deeper crafting, such as going for minions attack speed with speed craft, which is very expensive, you can get them up to a higher tier, and you'll be able to squeeze out even bigger weapons, such as the ones I have in this weapon, for example, with a tier 3 speed craft, for example. Obviously, that type of crafting is a lot more expensive, but can also yield a much better profit or a better weapon for you to use. But that's basically the TLDR guide of how to craft +2 minion-related weapons in this game. Very, very simple to do. It's not hard at all. It's very cheap, so don't waste your currency. Obviously, the influence modifier to get those really big, juicy ones can be a bit expensive and might not always be profitable, but it's also worth a try if you feel that you have the currency, you want to try this out. Anyways, like I mentioned in the last video, if you guys want me to do more of these videos where I'm specifically showing a direct example of how I approach certain crafts, let me know in the comments below, and hit the like button for more content and subscribe. And till next time, boys, stay safe, keep rocking.